Effective immediately. HR downstairs. 5 words. That's all Sophia Hartwell said before she dropped the termination notice on my desk and walked out. No handshake, no explanation. Just a piece of paper that would detonate a $285 million merger in exactly 72 hours. I'm Andrew Morrison. I'm 49 years old and I just got fired from Graybridge Defense Systems, the company I'd given 21 years of my life to. I looked down at the notice. Expensive cream paper, the kind they use when they want to make something look official. My name at the top. The date and time stamped across the middle. I checked my watch. It was exactly 12 o'clock noon on a Monday. My $127,000 performance bonus was scheduled to hit my account Thursday at noon, 72 hours from now. Sophia thought she was being clever. Cut me loose before payday. Save the company money. What she didn't know was that bonus wasn't just money. It was a tripwire connected to the one thing holding her merger together. Here's what you need to understand. That $127,000 was tied to a clause written 12 years ago by the company founder, Colonel Henry Walsh. Henry was a retired Marine, the kind of man who believed your word meant something and loyalty went both ways. When he wrote that clause into my contract, he made sure nobody could ever strip away what we'd built together. The clause was simple. Once that bonus paid, full ownership of our core defense protocol, the ironclad system, would automatically transfer to me. Not symbolically, legally. And without that system, Graybridge had nothing to offer Sentinel Defense Group. Sophia had just armed a bomb she didn't know existed. I signed the termination notice without a word. My hand didn't shake. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and headed for the elevator. HR was waiting in the lobby like they were escorting a criminal. I nodded and kept walking. On my desk, I'd left a small black USB drive. I saw Sophia glance at it as I passed her office. She probably thought it was my backup, proof she'd secured everything she needed. That drive was empty. Had been for years. Every real backup, every line of code for the ironclad system was locked behind biometric encryption only I could access. I got in my truck and drove home. The city looked normal. People going about their Monday. Nobody knew that in 72 hours, the biggest defense merger of the year would collapse. And it would all trace back to 5 words in an office. When I walked through the front door, Diana was in the kitchen. She took one look at my face and set down her coffee. Andy? I got fired. What happened? Sophia walked into my office at noon and handed me a termination notice, effective immediately. Diana's been my wife for 24 years. She's seen me through 8 years in the Navy, through all-nighters when systems crashed, through crises that would have broken other marriages. But this was different. Nicole's a senior in college. Daniel's a junior. We've got tuition payments coming due in 3 weeks, $47,000 for Nicole's final semester at Georgetown, $52,000 for Daniel at Virginia Tech, plus our mortgage. Why would she do that? Because she thinks she's saving the company money. Cut me out 72 hours before my bonus hits. And the clause Henry put in your contract? Diana knew about it. I'd told her years ago, back when Henry first explained it to me. She'd thought it was unnecessary then. Paranoid. Now she understood. She just triggered it. In 72 hours, I'll own the ironclad system. Not Graybridge. Me. Diana pulled out the chair across from me. Her nursing scrubs were still on. She'd been working double shifts at the hospital for 6 months, helping us save for the kids' education. The irony wasn't lost on me. What about the merger? Dead without the ironclad system. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I wasn't ready for. Andy, you've given them 21 years. What about us? What about Nicole and Daniel? What about your health? That hit harder than the termination. 3 months ago, my doctor told me my blood pressure was sitting at 160 over 95. Hypertension. Stage 1, but trending upward. He said I needed to cut stress, lose the 20 pounds I'd gained sitting behind a desk, maybe think about early retirement. I'd been taking medication but still waking up with headaches, still feeling that tightness in my chest during crisis calls. I know what I promised. Do you? Because you've been talking about retirement for 2 years, and you're still there every weekend. You missed Daniel's baseball game last month because of an emergency patch. You haven't taken a real vacation since Nicole was in high school. This is different. How? because Henry trusted me to protect what we built, and Sophia just tried to destroy it because she didn't bother reading the contract she's supposed to be managing. Diana studied my face. She wasn't angry, just tired. The kind of tired that comes from watching someone you love slowly burn themselves out for people who don't appreciate the sacrifice. Then finish it. But when this is over, we're going to Montana. No arguments, no phone calls, no emergencies that can't wait. Deal. I went upstairs to my home office and powered up my workstation. 3 monitors flickered to life. On the center screen, I opened a program I'd written years ago. A countdown clock appeared. Red numbers ticking down. 71 hours, 58 minutes, 42 seconds. The game had begun. Let me tell you about Henry Walsh. I met him 21 years ago when I was 28, fresh out of my Navy contractor work. I'd spent 8 years in the service, the last 4 working on classified communication systems for submarine fleets. When I got out, I wanted to keep doing work that mattered, but without the rigid military structure. Henry offered me exactly that. Graybridge was nothing back then, just a converted warehouse in Alexandria with 12 engineers trying to build cybersecurity for military contracts. The company had been hemorrhaging money for 18 months. 3 major clients had walked away after security breaches. Henry was 6 months from bankruptcy when I walked through his door. Henry saw something in me that first day. Maybe it was the discipline from my service. Maybe it was the fact that I asked about the security protocols before I asked about salary. But mostly, I think it was that we both believed the same thing. If you're going to build something that protects people, you build it right and you protect the people who help you do it. My first week, I identified 7 critical vulnerabilities in their existing systems. By month 3, I'd redesigned their entire encryption architecture. By year 1, we'd landed a $50 million contract with the Pentagon. Henry made me lead systems architect and gave me a 15% raise without me asking. Over the years, I became the guy they called when everything was on fire. In 2018, when a ransomware attack hit 3 Eastern power grids simultaneously, I was the one who stayed up 72 hours straight rebuilding our protocols from bare metal. The attack was sophisticated, probably state-sponsored. They'd found a way to tunnel through standard firewalls by mimicking legitimate control signals. I remember sitting in that conference room at 2 a.m., surrounded by empty coffee cups and Pentagon officials who looked like they'd aged 10 years in 10 hours. The Eastern Seaboard could have gone dark for weeks. Manufacturing, hospitals, transportation, everything runs on those grids. We stopped it with 6 minutes to spare. When the Pentagon needed quantum-resistant encryption for SCADA networks that controlled nuclear facilities, I designed the system. When our biggest client demanded 0-day patches delivered in 48 hours, I delivered them in 36. I didn't do it for awards or recognition. I did it because that's what you do when you're part of something that matters. 12 years ago, Henry asked me to meet him at a steakhouse in Arlington, Morton's. It was a Thursday night, both of us exhausted from a week of crisis management. Someone had tried to hack the Federal Reserve's transaction processing system, and we'd spent 4 days building new security layers while the FBI breathed down our necks. Over bourbon, Henry always ordered Blanton's. He told me he'd written something into my contract that nobody else knew about. Not the board, not the legal team, nobody. Andy, he said, I've been in this business long enough to see what happens when the wrong people take control. They gut everything that made a place worth a damn. They sell to the highest bidder without caring if that bidder knows what they're buying. I won't let that happen to what we built. He explained the clause. My annual bonus wasn't just compensation, it was a legal trigger. Once paid, the intellectual property rights for the ironclad system would transfer to me automatically. The transfer agreement was already executed, held in escrow by a law firm in D.C., waiting for that payment confirmation from Graybridge's payroll system. You'll own it, Henry said. Lock, stock, and barrel. Nobody can steal it, sell it to the wrong buyer, or run it into the ground. I remember setting down my glass. Henry, that's your life's work. No, it's our life's work. And I trust you to protect it more than I trust any board of directors or CEO's kids who think they know better. At the time, I thought he was being paranoid. But Henry had survived 2 tours in Vietnam and 30 years in the defense industry. He knew how to see threats before they materialized. He'd watched good companies get destroyed by people who didn't understand what they were destroying. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Diana was still asleep. I went downstairs, made coffee, and checked my phone. 3 missed calls from unknown numbers, 2 voicemails. I deleted them without listening. The countdown on my computer read 59 hours, 12 minutes, 7 seconds. I was halfway through my coffee when my phone rang again. This time, it was a reporter from Defense Industry Weekly, a trade publication that covered our sector. The email had come through first, polite but pointed. Susan Martinez was her name. She'd heard rumors about personnel changes at Graybridge related to the Sentinel merger. Did I have any comment? I wrote back one line. Ask them about Section 14. That's all it took. Section 14 was buried on page 847 of the merger agreement, the key personnel continuity clause. It listed 3 people as essential to the merger integration. I was first on that list, followed by 2 other senior engineers who'd been with the company for over a decade. If any of us left Graybridge before the integration was complete, Sentinel had the right to delay, renegotiate, or walk away entirely. Sophia had signed that agreement 6 months ago without reading the fine print. I knew this because I'd been in the room when George Hartwell, her father, and the CEO had asked her to review the technical clauses. She'd waved him off. Legal already vetted it, she'd said. Let's just get this done. Now, a reporter was about to start asking questions that would make Sentinel's lawyers very uncomfortable. Questions about whether Graybridge could actually deliver what they'd promised without the people who'd built it. I went for a walk around the neighborhood. The morning air was cold, the streets mostly empty. I needed to clear my head, but also to get my blood pressure down. The tightness in my chest was back, that familiar pressure I'd been ignoring for months. The doctor's voice echoed in my head. Your blood pressure's too high, Andy. You need to reduce stress. I laughed out loud. Reduce stress. Sure, Doc. Right after I watched 21 years of my work get properly valued. By the time I got home from my walk, my inbox had exploded. Patricia Reed, lead counsel for Sentinel Defense Group, had sent an urgent message marked confidential, immediate response required. She wanted to schedule a call within the hour. I called her back. Mr. Morrison, thank you for taking my call. We've had some questions raised about the merger agreement, specifically Section 14. We were hoping you could provide clarity. I kept my voice level. Section 14 is your key personnel continuity clause. You should have the original agreement on file. Yes, we do. But there's some ambiguity about the licensing rights if certain personnel are no longer with Graybridge during integration. No ambiguity, I said. The language is explicit. Without my active role at Graybridge, the licensing rights for the ironclad system don't automatically remain with the company. Silence on the other end. I could hear papers shuffling, probably her legal team frantically reviewing documents in the background. Would you be able to confirm whether those rights are currently in force? The licensing certificate was last validated while I was employed at Graybridge. My employment status changed yesterday at noon. If you want current certification beyond that, you'll need to ask Graybridge's legal department. She let out a breath that sounded like she'd been holding it for the entire conversation. Understood. Thank you for your time, Mr. Morrison. 10 minutes later, my personal email account lit up like a Christmas tree. Someone at Sentinel had forwarded an internal email chain to the wrong distribution list, and my address had somehow gotten caught in the thread. The entire conversation was there, laid out in corporate legal language that might as well have been a countdown to Sophia's career death. Patricia had sent an urgent request to Graybridge's legal team demanding immediate proof of ownership for the ironclad system. Her email was direct. As per Section 14 of the merger agreement, the absence of Andrew Morrison from Graybridge employment raises substantial questions about licensing validity. Please provide current certification showing active, uncontested ownership of all intellectual property central to the proposed integration. The forwarded chain also showed that Stephen Brooks, one of Graybridge's board directors, was now copied on everything. Stephen was the pragmatic one, the guy who actually read contracts and asked uncomfortable questions. He'd been with the company since before Henry's time, back when it was just a startup bleeding money. He'd be asking questions Sophia couldn't answer, but what really caught my attention was the timestamp. Patricia's email had been sent at 9:47 a.m. By 10:15, it had been escalated to Graybridge's CEO, George Hartwell. By 10:30, an emergency board meeting had been called for 2 p.m. that afternoon. I closed my laptop and didn't forward the email to anyone. The less I actively participated, the more they'd scramble to figure out what was happening. That afternoon, my phone rang. Jason Torres, one of our senior engineers. I'd been training Jason for 3 years, teaching him Not just the technical work, but how to think like a systems architect. He was 32, sharp as a blade, and had the kind of work ethic that reminded me of myself at his age. "Mr. Morrison, I wanted you to know what just happened. I'm listening." Sophia called me into her office an hour ago. She offered me VP of Engineering effective immediately. $200,000 salary, full benefits, stock options. I waited. Jason had a way of building up to his point. I told her I needed to think about it. Then she started asking about the ironclad system backups, where you kept the encryption keys, how the licensing worked, whether I had access to the source code repositories. And I told her the truth. That system is locked down tighter than Fort Knox. Everything requires biometric verification tied to your personal credentials. Even if I had administrative access, which I don't, I couldn't touch the core protocols without you physically being there to authenticate. What did she say to that? She got this look on her face like someone had just told her Christmas was canceled. Then she asked me if I thought you'd come back if they made you a better offer. I almost smiled. What did you tell her? I told her that in 3 years of working with you, I'd never seen you make a decision based on money, that you made decisions based on principle and respect, and that ship had already sailed. You didn't have to do that, Jason. Yeah, I did. You taught me that integrity matters more than a paycheck. I'm not forgetting that because someone waves a bigger number at me. After we hung up, I checked the financial news. Graybridge Defense Systems stock had dropped 8% since market open. Volume was 3 times normal. Someone was selling, and the smart money was getting nervous. By evening, the situation had escalated beyond anything I'd expected. Defense Industry Weekly had published a preliminary article titled "Personnel Changes Raise Questions About Major Defense Merger." It was careful the way trade publications are when they're walking close to the edge of what they can prove, but it asked all the right questions. The article mentioned my termination, though they didn't name me directly. It referenced concerns about key personnel continuity clauses and questions about intellectual property licensing. Most damaging, it quoted an anonymous source saying that critical technical leadership changes could impact the viability of proposed integration timelines. That anonymous source wasn't me. I hadn't talked to anyone except Patricia Reed. But someone inside Graybridge was leaking, and that meant the panic was spreading beyond Sophia's office. Diana found me on the porch that evening reading the article on my phone. "How bad is it?" she asked. "For them? It's about to get much worse. For us?" I looked at her, really looked. She'd changed out of her scrubs into jeans and one of my old Navy sweatshirts. Even after 24 years of marriage, even after all the stress and missed dinners and emergency calls, she was still on my side. For us, I think it's going to be just fine. The countdown on my computer upstairs read 31 hours, 14 minutes, 22 seconds. Tomorrow would bring bigger headlines, more urgent phone calls, and the moment when Sophia Hartwell would finally understand what she'd done. But tonight, I sat on my porch with my wife, watching the sunset over a neighborhood where nobody knew that in 31 hours, one of the biggest defense contractors in the country would learn that some people actually can't be replaced. Wednesday morning arrived with a phone call that changed everything. Sophia's number flashed on my screen at 9:47 a.m. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Andrew Morrison. "Where the hell have you been?" Her voice was sharp, barely controlled. "Sentinel's legal team called me yesterday. They said they spoke to you. What did you tell them? Good morning to you too." "Don't. They're acting like there's a problem with Section 14. What did you say? Have you read the contract, Sophia?" Silence. The kind that stretches too long and tells you everything you need to know. "I've reviewed the key sections," she said finally. "I'd recommend reading all of it, especially the parts your legal team didn't flag. Andy, this isn't a game. They want proof of ownership for the ironclad system. We can't find the certificate. Which vault are you checking?" "The legal vault. The contract archive." I almost smiled. "That's interesting. Last time I checked, the licensing certificate was in a separate system, one with restricted access protocols. The system you controlled?" I glanced at my monitor. The countdown read 26 hours, 13 minutes, 51 seconds. "Andy, just tell me where it is. That would require me to still work for the company." "I don't." I heard her moving, shoes clicking fast against hard floors. She was pacing, probably in her father's office with the entire board watching. "If we can't produce that certificate, the merger—" She stopped herself. "If you can't produce it," I said quietly, Sentinel will invoke the delay clause. 9 months minimum, maybe longer. And during that time, they'll decide whether this deal is worth salvaging. Damn it, Andy! The shout cracked through the phone. This is my reputation on the line. Yes, it is. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then she tried again, her voice softer, more desperate. Look, if we work something out, if I talk to the board about reinstating you with a promotion, maybe senior VP, I'm not coming back, Sophia, but read your contract. All of it. I ended the call. Thursday morning arrived cold and clear. I made coffee and sat on the porch watching the neighborhood wake up. My phone was off. I didn't need distractions for what came next. At 11:55 a.m., I went upstairs and opened my laptop. The countdown read 4 minutes, 38 seconds. Diana stood in the doorway watching. You sure about this? She asked. Yeah, I'm sure. The numbers ticked down. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. At exactly 12 o'clock noon, the screen flashed. Transfer complete. No alarms, no fanfare, just a simple notification and a PDF that appeared on screen. I opened it. The licensing certificate for the Ironclad protocol, updated automatically. Owner, Andrew Morrison. 21 years of work, now mine. My phone started buzzing immediately. I turned it back on to find 47 missed calls and a voicemail box that was completely full. But there was one call I was expecting. Christopher Kane, CEO of Sentinel Defense Group. Mr. Morrison, I wanted to inform you personally, we're suspending the Graybridge merger. I saw the statement. There's another reason I'm calling. My legal team reviewed your background extensively. 21 years at Graybridge, primary architect on every major DoD contract they've won. The Ironclad system's success is clearly tied to you personally, not the company structure. I waited. We drafted an alternative proposal, a direct partnership between Sentinel and you personally, through your own consulting entity. Are you interested? I'd need to review the terms. I'll send it within the hour. Mr. Morrison, I'll be direct. We need someone we can trust with critical infrastructure protection. Based on everything we've learned this week, that's you, not Graybridge. The news broke fast. Sentinel Defense Group announces exclusive partnership with Morrison Defense Solutions. The press release was straightforward. Sentinel is pleased to confirm a strategic partnership with Andrew Morrison for the continued development and deployment of advanced cybersecurity protocols. No mention of Graybridge. No mention of Sophia. Just my name and the system I'd built. By market close, Graybridge stock had fallen 31% from Monday's opening. Financial networks were calling it one of the worst merger collapses in defense industry history. One headline read, how a $127K bonus clause destroyed a $285 million deal. Stephen Brooks called that evening. Andy, I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. We should have protected you better. Henry would have been ashamed of how this went down. Henry built the protection I needed 12 years ago. He knew what could happen. For what it's worth, Sophia's no longer with the company. The board asked for her resignation this morning. 6 weeks later, Diana and I were standing on a dock in Montana watching the sun set over a lake so still it looked like glass. We'd rented a cabin for a month. No cell service, nothing but water and trees and silence. You did it, she said. We did it. I couldn't have made it through without you. Jason had taken over day-to-day operations of Morrison Defense Solutions. The Sentinel contract was worth $8.5 million over 3 years, and we already had 2 other major clients interested. But that was Jason's problem now. I was fishing. So what's next? Diana asked. Now I remember what it's like to just exist without a crisis hanging over my head. I teach Jason and the team everything I know, and in 3 years I'm done for good. Diana smiled. I'm holding you to that. My granddaughter Emma, Nicole's 8-year-old, came running down the dock. She'd been trying to tie fishing knots all afternoon. Grandpa, I did it! Look! She showed me a perfect improved clinch knot, the same one Henry had taught me 30 years ago. I watched her face light up with pride and realized something important. This was what 21 years of work had really been about. Not the contracts or the systems or the recognition. It was about building something that would last. Something that would protect the people who mattered. 72 hours. That's all it took to change everything. Sophia thought she was cutting costs. What she did was hand me my future and prove that competence, loyalty, and doing the work right actually matters. I'm 49 years old. I've got 3 years of consulting left, then I'm done. And somewhere in Virginia, there's a boardroom that learned the hard way that some people can't be replaced. Not because they're irreplaceable, but because they earned it.